Okay, let's get into it. So we have our browser open. And the first thing we want to do, because we're about to start writing our first syntax in Solidity, the first thing you want to do is go to the website remix.ethereum.org. And you'll run into something similar to this. So again, it is remix.ethereum.org. Okay, this will be our IDE, our web-based IDE that we use to write our code. Okay, our Solidity syntax. So you come here and you'll see something to where it tells you to opt in and all this other stuff. Obviously, if you accept, you can use it. If you decline, you do not use it, right? Okay, so it'll give you a little breakdown like welcome and tell you some things about the interface here. We have our compiler right here. And this is where we deploy our contracts, as you can see. Now, click through all of that. That's great. You can definitely explore this on your leisure time. But right now, like I said, I want to go into this, make it very simple so we can, start deploying our first contract. So the first thing I like to do is I like to go into tests, and let's deal with valid. This right here, the little thing compiler. Let's go ahead and use valid. And you see a whole bunch of all this other stuff. Let's erase all of that. Okay, we want to start off with a clean slate. All right, we don't want anything interfering with what we have going on, because what we're going to do is we're going to write everything out. And before we even write everything out, what I'm really going to do is just go over basic syntax with you so you kind of know what things look like, what's familiar, and how to do things, okay? So the first things first is we have to import Solidity, right? So in order to import Solidity, the first syntax is pragma, the first keyword, right? Pragma. Then what do you want to import? We're going to import Solidity. Okay, and you always have to have the version. Hold on, let me lowercase that. Always lowercase and uppercase do make a difference, so definitely pay attention. But we're going to import Solidity, and we're going to use a version, and that version is 4.0. Yes. Okay. Now, the first thing I like to do all the time is create comments. And comments actually help your code, at least with you reading your code. They're not displayed. If you guys took my HTML CSS course, which is in the computer science course, you guys took that, then you kind of have a understanding of comments. But if you haven't, comments are, they don't get displayed in the code. They're just there. They don't get displayed when the code is ran, but they're there for you when you're reading the code, or if someone was to read your code, they can actually follow along and see what's going on. So comments start off with 2/, and we're going to say that the first thing that we did was we import Solidity. Okay, not solidify, but Solidity. I don't know why I can't spell. Okay, Solidity. So this is how we import Solidity. Okay, the next thing we would do is we would import a file name. So whatever our file names, whatever we need to run along this Solidity, which we don't need anything. We're just, this is just some basics. We'll go into that as we continue on learning Solidity. But right now, let's just say you want to import a file name. This is where you would do it right in the beginning, okay? For my people who are a little familiar with JavaScript, you can also import as the same thing. You can import as, let's just say, as symbol name from, and then you can say, from file name, whatever the file name you want to import. Okay, that's a way you can do it. And I think also in JavaScript you can do import alias, but we're not going to do that. These are some ways you can import, at least these two ways. Definitely the first one is obviously easier. So import your file names. Then once you do that, you can actually start your first contract. So here is your contract, And you start that off with the word contract, and then you name whatever you want your contract to be. And in this case, let's just call it simple. Let's call it simple contract because, we're still learning here. And then you always have your curly brackets with a indent, not an indent, but a space. Okay, so this is the first thing you do. This is the first step into creating your content. This is the base layout. You import your Solidity, you import your file names, and then you start your contract. Now, anything right here in the middle in your contract is your contract. Everything else is, the baseline of the code. Something in like HTML for my HTML folks. So now you know the basis. Let's move on. Okay, so now we're moving on, and with Solidity, just like any object-oriented language, it contains things like state variables, functions, event types, struct types, and even enum types. We'll explore all of them anyway. Now, let's go ahead and erase. Actually, we're not going to erase anything because we good. So we have our simple contract, right? And in our simple contract, let's do a state variable, right? Again, we're going to create comments so we know what's going on, okay? And our comments, again, it's just telling a story of our code, what we're doing. So, excuse me. So we're doing state variable, okay? And how you declare a state variable is the unit integer, which we'll go in a little more as we touch more. So no worries if some of these feel a little unfamiliar to you. If you haven't done any programming at all, we will keep reiterating these keywords that we use. So let's just take it step by step. So we have unit in an integer, which is UINT, and then stored data. Let's just say stored data. That's what I was going to do. We're going to name it. We have to name it. Okay, now we also have in state variable, state means that it is, the current of what it is. So what we're going to do now is talk about functions. Actually, let's talk about modifiers. Modifiers are actually conditioned to a function, or you can say like conditions before we can actually run that function. So we have to do the modifier first. And by the way, for my advanced folks, we do have the compiler right here, which we actually can't click on, but we'll get some errors. And that's because, we haven't completed the code, which is totally fine. We're still completed, so we won't run the compiler until later. So for my people who kind of been in programming a little bit, don't keep clicking the compiler to, run your code, make sure it's good, because again, we're still learning and we haven't finished the code yet, right? So that's, we'll get to that when we actually write that final contract. Okay, so let's go in for the modifier, right? So we're going to always do our modifier is a conditional, right? We're just going to do some type of comment. Now, to use the modifier, we got the modifier keyword, modifier, and in this case, we'll just use only data, right? And we have to use our brackets and our curly bracket, okay, to keep it inside. Now, we're doing a condition, and we're saying that we're only going to use only data, and we're going to set this condition of the modifier, right? So we're going to set it as required. And what are we going to require? We're going to require something. In this case, we're going to require our stored data, right? Our stored data. I'm spelling things wrong today, and I don't know. Our stored data. And then we're going to say our stored data should be equal or bigger than 0. So that's equal or bigger than 0. Okay. And they should be up here, actually. There we go. And we're going to end it like that. We also, I believe in this syntax, we have to have an underscore and a semicolon to close out this modifier. I don't think this is suffice. We need a semicolon here. Okay, an underscore and a semicolon. remember, for modifiers, okay? And now this is a modifier. Now the modifier is definitely going to need some type of function, right? So let's go ahead and say we're going to start a function, okay? And as you can guess, to start a function is the keyword function, right? And it works in similar languages, right? Just how every other function, type of parameter it takes. And in this case, it's going to take, we're going to take it an integer called x. So let's do set and then integer. And again, we'll get into that. Integers is kind of like a number, kind of like a number 34, 35, just regular integer. But we're going to say that this integer is x, and we're going to make it public. We can also do private, right? If you guys familiar with blockchain, you have public and private. So let's make sure we got that private here, public, and then public, we're going to show our curly brackets. We're going to show our stored data. Stored data. And our stored data, and again, this is our, our modifier is going to check that we have this value above, and it's going to be equal to 0, right? And before it runs this function, this value is fitting that, and this condition has to be met, right? So with this condition being met, we'll actually run this function and pass in this this integer, right? So, let me do equals x. Okay. So we have the modifier and we have the function. Okay. Once again, we're passing this integer into, we're going to add it into the stored data. That's why we have the equal to x. So basically the modifier will check that we have this value that's above or equal to 0 before it runs this function. Okay. And so that if that value is actually fitting that and that condition is met, then, the function is actually going to run. Now, so last thing, we have what's called an event, right? So events are basically like JavaScript events. Like I said, it takes a lot from JavaScript and Python. So if you're familiar with those languages, then you're right at home. So event is just like JavaScript, right? Or, any other languages. They are the things that actually happens in the actual program. So when an event is initiated, then this event is expecting, the things to do what it needs to do afterwards. So we have our event, and of course you start off with the keyword event, and our event is going to be named sent. Our event is going to be named sent, and it's going to send from an address or send to an address, and that's going to be the integer unit stored data. Okay. And then we just close that out. Okay. So like I said, this will basically just execute. This is what's going to happen once, everything executes. This is what happens afterward. That's the event. And we are saying that it's going to send from, send to, and that would be our stored data. Okay. Let's continue our exploration of the syntax. So let's talk about types in Solidity. Solidity is like aesthetically type of language, right? So in other words, each variable types must be specified. So let's take a look at all the major types. Let's go ahead and just erase what we have here. Let's erase it all the way up until import Solidity. That's cool. We're going to talk about types here. We're going to really focus on types so you can kind of get an understanding of, the syntax that we need, or syntax that, is available for you to kind of, use the code, write the code how you like, Anyway, so we have our string, right? We're going to do our comments. So we have our string, and a string is basically a name, right? And basically a name, and you would write it something like this. Let's say Jessica K. Devin, right? That's a string. We also have integers, like we kind of been talking about it earlier, right? And basically, integers, you have unit integers, and that is the UINT, and that's some type of stored data, stored data. And again, that's some type of number. Let's just say we want it to be 34, right? We're going to close it out. Then we have a Boolean, right? I don't know why I'm not. Oh, excuse me. So we have a Boolean, and that starts with bool, and it's basically a true or false value, right? It's only true or false. It's saying, if this true or this false. That's all a Boolean is. And then in Solidity, we have an address, right? And an address is something connected to some type of wallet address. So we're going to use wallet address here. And it can be in anything that's like, if you're familiar with, wallet addresses, crypto wallet addresses, then it's something ridiculously long. And, I'm just typing something here, nothing too crazy, right? But it'll be something that looks like this at the end of the day. Then we have arrays. Again, just like arrays in any other language, at least Python and JavaScript, we have a string of, what the heck? We have our string. We have our string of names, that's going to be unordered. That's how we close it. Let's see. We also have bytes. And bytes we can use as, 32, just say 32 code, it's counting our bytes here. What else do we have? Let's see. We can declare, we have our struct. Yes, our struct. Let me come down here. And we have struct to define. And we have we can say a struct user. And our curly brackets, and our struct user, that's basically saying that, we can create our own type of structs. We can create our own type of strings here, like a user, and what to pass that value inside it. So for example, we have, we can say a string, and that string can be the first name. Okay. That string could be the first name, and then we have another string, and that string could be the last name. Okay. Let's see, what else do we have? And then we have enums. Oh yeah, let's talk about enums. Enums are pretty much the same as any programming language. So when you type an enum, it's basically saying what's the user type. Is the type as buyer or seller? Let me put enums here. Oh, excuse me. Let me put enum. And obviously you started with the enum keyword. You can say the enum is the user type. And in this case, is it a buyer or seller? Okay. And then, mappings, right? Mappings. Again, I cannot spell. And mappings is pretty much like, a dictionary, right? So you're going to do so you have the keyword, and it goes inside, and you can define your mapping this way. So you can do not this plural, and singular, and then you have address, that equals to a unit address, and we want to say that equal to a unit integer. And like I said, we're going to do public balances. Okay. So yeah, that's that's basically mappings that we created just like that. So we have our strings, our integers, our booleans, address, arrays, bytes, structs, enums, and mappings. Definitely take note of this. I do have the resource, the exercise files. So no need to, if you don't need to like, pause it and write it all down. You can just follow along with that file. Okay, so let's move on with our variables. So there are a few global available variables in units and Solidity. So let's explore these here. So we're going to erase all of this. And again, like I said, you can see the code, we have it in the exercise file. So you can always refer back to that if you forgot anything or if you miss anything. Like I said, I want to keep this simple. I just want to talk about the types and different syntax before we all put it together and create this contract, right? So let's move on. So we have a few variables that we can't use for ourselves, and let me just create a simple contract. So the variables that we can't use for our own are, let me see. So we have our contract, and let's keep it simple contract, right? And enter. So in our contract, we can't use ether, Zaz, Bo, Benny, and we, right? We cannot use those. And these are basically units that, we can use inside the contract, and we can leverage those units or variables for our own code, but we can't create new variables with these names, okay? So for example, we could do something like a boolean, right, is let's just say is equal to one ether, right? And that equals to 5,000 Benny. Let me make sure I wrote that right, because I'm having a time spelling. And we're gonna close it, equal to 5,000 Benny. Okay, so you can use them in, other code you create, but you can't create variables with these names, right? So you can use it like this, but you can't create them as a name, right? You can just use it to help you. And the same thing goes for time units, right? So if we have time units, so we can say bool is time equals one is true seconds. Right, we're gonna see if this is true or false. But like I said, we can use it, but we cannot use it as a name, right? But we can use it to reference something or to help us out with something. So again, bool is time equals one and one equals seconds. And again, the seconds has to be plural. And then within the time units, it does have to be, plural. So we have, seconds in the time, we have minutes, hours, days, and weeks. Okay. We did have years, but I think years was taken out due to like leap year or something in that sense, but this is what we had to work with. So let's just say bool is time, and that's equal 1 hours, always keep it plural, even if it's only just one, 60 minutes, right? Is this true or false? Right, basically that's what we're asking. Is this condition will be true or will it be false? So yeah, so feel free to use on any of these global available variables, seconds, minutes, hours, days, weeks. It should be in the documentation somewhere, but I would recommend using against it as far as like trying to create everything. You may run into problems with years. So like I said, we're just going to use seconds, minutes, hours, days, and weeks. It's all plural, and you can't use it as a name of your own, but you can use it to help you with referring back to something in the code, okay? And again, these are just other variables that you can use. Let's talk about other special variables, okay? In Solidity, there are a few special functions and variables that you can use, such as messages, blocks, in transactions. So let's go ahead and remove this here. Let's just remove what's in our simple contract because we're going to keep our contract simple, right? So let's talk about block. So block, again, like blockchain terminology, is that block of information that is in the Ethereum. And within that block, you have access to certain types of information. So you can access to the number of the block, right? So we can do block and then number of the block. Okay. You can also access the difficulty of the block. So let's do block difficulty. I don't know why I'm not a key letter B today. Okay, and then you can what else you could do? You got the block number, you got the block difficulty, and you can do the access the miner's address. You could do block the Coinbase. That's what it is. Running a blank. You can do the Coinbase and then put in your data there. Okay. Let's see. And with comments, just going into comments, I want you guys to really utilize comments. It really helps you create like really good, clean code. You can do like a double, double here. You can say that I can do one line and then one line. See? And I could do two lines, right? Because I put that slash and asterisk to say here. But I have to close my comment or everything's going to be considered it. So I do the same thing back. Okay. That's comment. Just to give y'all, you don't have to just do it one line. You can do it two lines. And this is how you can do it two lines by opening and closing it with the slash asterisk instead of the two slashes. Okay. Just FYI once again. So we have the second one, we have message. So basically messages is that, what you're going to send. So we're going to do MSG and we can do sender. We can do a message value. And let's see, you can have access value could basically, it was something else. The data, you can have access to the data in that message. Access the data in that message. All right. Let's see. Another one, another variable available is transactions. Right? And so within so when a transaction is done, you have access to this particular information as well. And this special function and variable you can access with Solidity, and we're actually going to use some of these message variables when we do our next contract in the next section. Yeah, I can't spell for nothing. But these are like some special variables, some other special functions we can do here. Like I said, we can, in our contract, we could take a look at the blocks, right? Our blocks number, the difficulty, and our miners. And then we can look at the messages, our data, and then we can look at that transaction and see what's the origin of the transaction, okay? Let's talk about operators in Solidity. So we have operators that we can have arithmetic operators. Again, let me make sure I spelled that right. Arithmetic operators. And these operators are, math operators: minus, addition, subtraction, multiply, division, percent, and the two amber signs. The two, let me see. We have minus, multiply, exponent, divide, reminder, and exponents. So basically what we can do here, so we have all these integers. So we could do unit integer. We could say A equals 2, right? Something like that, we can declare the value of 2 to another integer, right? We can do the same thing, unit integer, unit integer B equals 3, right? We can assign our integers like that. You can do unit integer C equals A. You can do C with A equals A twice, right? Exponent, do exponent twice to B. Okay, you could do, again, it's all math. That's how you want to do it. You can do logical operators. Yeah, I messed up here. And the logical operators, these are the explanation. Let me just say we have an explanation point, which is a negation. So not, you have the and ampersand twice, the and sign twice. There we go. The and sign twice, which means that and, for example, if you have a condition that's false or, and this condition is false and it's meant to be false, then you have, your two lines like this. What we have our something that's false. We have our 2 lines like that. What else we have? We have our 2 lines. You have the equal, which we've used kind of already. And you have, what's not equal, and not equal is explanation equal. Okay, that's kind of like our logical operator. So you can say, again, something's true or false. Does something has money in it? Has money, and it can be false. Right? Is this true or false? And let's see. Oh, we have a bitwise. I believe that's what we have in here. All right, so these are kind of like so our operators. Oh, no, we have one more, which is our bitwise operators, right? And our bitwise operators are used for bytes. So you have the and symbol. Where's the and? You have the and symbol. And again, it's very similar to logic operators, but it's specifically for bytes, right? So it's kind of the same. And right, you have our up, and you have our right shift and our 2 arrows and left, so these are basically our bits. It's kind of the same as logical, but they're used for, like I said, bytes more than anyway. So these are our most common operators that we're going to use with Solidity. You can, feel free to go deeper into them. If you're not, if you're unsure or don't understand some of them, it's okay if you don't have the understanding yet. You can take a look at the documentation, or we can experiment with them and see with your code. And I think that's the best way to learn, is to really just experiment on your own with code. I'm going to give you the basics of the syntax of Solidity, so show you how to set up a contract, and then you can plug and play as you see fit on a contract that you want to create, that you want to code. Okay, so let's move on. Let's talk about conditionals and Solidity. You have experience with other languages, then this is probably the easiest part to learn. So if you understand the conditionals, if and for loop, etc., then, again, you're right at home. You could probably skip this little video here, but if not, let's go in a little bit more. Then the only conditional that you have, a switch. Let's just say a little more. Let's just explore a few here. So let's go ahead and remove this code. Like I said, we always have your reference in these files. So no worries, you can always refer back to these exercise files. So the first one we have is objects one. And let me just put a note here. Oh, let me just put a note here that is going to be a if statement, right? Note here is statement. And it basically goes that if the condition is met, then run the code inside of the curly brace, or again, else run the code. So it's very similar. So let's go ahead. We have if A equals true, we have curly bracket. If A equals true, right? And again, this code is a if this condition is met, right? If this condition is met, then we're gonna have our else. And as you can see, I don't know why my keyboard is being very sticky. There we go. Okay, so if A equals 2, then the condition is met, is else. At first, so and it basically goes, if the condition is met, then run the code inside that curly brace, or again, else run this code. Very similar, right? Else is very similar to run this code again. The second one is a while. So let's go down here. We always want to make sure we have our indents. Let's go down here. Sorry, guys, I just want to make sure I got, got the right steps. Let's go down here, and we're going to checking condition first, right? So while, so again, it's familiar with other languages. So if a condition is met or equal to 0, or if a condition is met or equal to 0, and we're going to say, this is the code if the condition is met. On here, code of conditions met, you should copy that and paste that here, same thing. While the condition is true, the code run here. The code is met, then the condition, the code will run here. Then we will do run this code until condition. Do run this code until condition no longer true. Until the condition no longer true. And then we're going to say do, keyword do, and we're going to do this code first. Okay. And we're going to do inside the bracket again, while A is met. Okay. So basically, in other words, we have is a do while, right? So this is one of the do the code inside here. So do this first and then check these conditions. So the opposite of this while here is this, checking upon condition first. Okay. And while this condition is true, run this inside the code. While this condition is true, run this inside the code. Okay. Run this inside the code. This one is the opposite. So the do here is do run this code until the condition is no longer true. So basically do this code while this condition is true after. So a bigger or equal to 0. And then the last one we have here is for loop, right? And we do our code with our contract with the for loop. So basically for loop is checking with an integer of, let me see, let's go for, it's basically checking with a unit integer I equals 0 or I is greater than or equal to 50. Okay. Or we can say, we can add the plus, we can add 1, very similar, right? So we're gonna add the 1 and the plus plus, oops, and plus plus. Okay, and then we can run the code, whatever the code may be. Okay, so basically, as long as this is running for the loop, as many times these conditions are met, then the code inside here will work. Okay, so if, so basically we have our if statements. If this happens, then if the condition is met, then do this, right? And we're going to check condition first. While this may be this, the code is met. And then once it's met, we're going to run this code until it's no longer true, right? And we're going to make sure that we do this first. And then we have our loops. The loop is just, it's going to keep on going as long as this condition is met. Okay, it's going to keep having a loop. I don't want to go too far into too further into conditionals. I believe that you kind of have to play around with it a little more. You have to really write code a little bit to kind of get a solid understanding of conditions. But once you have a solid footing, you take this knowledge to Python, to to JavaScript, to everything, right? So play around with conditions if conditionals if you don't feel that comfortable with it. However, this is something that, we're definitely going to use in our Solidity contract and something that is very familiar in other programming languages.